In the Ozarks, people have always lived in rhythm with the natural world. Hunting, fishing, living off the land aren't just things we like to do, it's who we are. And though our lives are inextricably linked to the land we live on, today we've never been more disconnected from it. So join us as we travel across the region, bringing you the voices of the Ozarks, deepen our connection to the land, sharpen our skills in the outdoors, and learn what it means to be an Ozarker.
Unless there's sunlight getting to the ground during the growing season, the summer, nothing's going to change under there.
That's where your timber stand improvement comes in.
Exactly. We got to kill some trees. I know everyone gets all shook up about killing trees.
Don't kill the trees, Daniel.
But we like to save the good trees, the big mature trees, the mass-producing trees. We're killing the low-quality trees, those mid-story trees, the trees that are unhealthy and just aren't ever going to do anything for critters, right? So we can get way more habitat and beneficial species at ground level for our wildlife than a tree's ever going to do.
Fire by itself, just to remove the fuel, the leaf litter, isn't enough. You kind of need to combine that with getting the sunlight to the ground through timber stand improvement, which I know you guys do
or logging.
Okay.
You can do it with logging, but you have to have a follow-up plan to logging. I promise you, people have seen clear cuts and logging work in the Ozarks, and there was no follow-up, right? And it's just stems, and there's no habitat for deer anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's a wasteland again. So you can log, but you have to have a really good follow-up. And a lot of times that does include herbicide, and then you have to manage with fire to some extent. So just logging, letting it go, not great. But we can use the value of the timber and have really good habitat if we manage it appropriately and follow up and do some really good work.
When you guys are out consulting people, traveling across the country in the Southeast, managing and telling them how they might manage, do you guys recommend that a lot, to do some logging to help pay for the services and the just the amount of work and the equipment that's going to go into managing that property?
It really depends on the landowner and their goals. If they need that income, absolutely. And then we help walk them through that process of try to balance the income of the timber and the habitat and how to manage that. And then there's other guys, they strictly are going timber, and they're not really worried about the habitat. They want to know, how can I maximize my timber? Yeah. There's other guys that could care less about the timber value, and they just want really good habitat. They want to do really good work for creation. We've got a guy right now, if I remember, I think he's in Mississippi, I think he's in Mississippi. He has so many pines, he can't even give them away. He's asked loggers, he said, I will give them to you if you will come cut them so I can get habitat. And because there's no value, they won't do it. And so what's that doing for wildlife? Mm-hmm. What's that doing for creation? It's doing absolutely nothing, because we've kind of messed up this balance between, maximizing timber for money and trying to do something really good for wildlife. I mean, there's this imbalance there, and he can't get rid of these trees. And he wants to use them. Yeah. But he can't. He's just sitting there, and he's not making any income, and his property has no habitat. Yeah. So there's a misbalance there, and that happens a lot.
That's interesting. So he's really not even able to give it away.
No.
Is it just because that's
and he has
specific?
Great timber, great mature pine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that specific area they're just rich with pine timber? They don't need it?
Yeah, it has to do with the quota, the sawmill, and production and all that. Yeah. But we see that problem quite a bit. Guys that want to remove trees and, utilize that resource, they just can't move wood. And so they're kind of stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
And
interesting.
then
Probably couldn't give away a cedar tree around here if you tried either. So.
we're logging all ours, and they're
Really?
going over to a mill over here, and they're taking them like crazy.
They are.
Yeah.
Really?
Are these, I mean, big, huge, mature
All
cedars?
all our cedar sticks. Yeah.
All of them.
Yep.
Interesting.
Are they even the small
And
ones?
I've got a client down in southern Arkansas. They're getting ready to cut 100 acres of cedars. They're going to take the logs, and that crew actually even has a mulcher on site, and they're going to mulch what they're not taking out in sticks.
That's what I
and
was
they're
gonna
going to
ask.
sell the cedar as bedding.
Because that's how you could utilize even the small pieces.
Yeah.
Through the mulcher.
And for habitat, that cleans it up real good. And cedars are great because you don't have to use herbicide. You can fell a cedar below the lowest limb, and it's terminated.
Yeah.
Right. So you
Oh,
don't
I
have
know
to
that.
you don't have to apply herbicide. So you can just with a steel chainsaw clean that puppy up. Now you've got sunlight to the ground just like that. Get some fire in there, and within just a short amount of time, they're going to have 100 acres of incredible habitat.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that about cedars. I assumed you had to apply herbicide to everything.
Nope, not on cedars.
Ah.
The herbicide is it mostly invasive grasses or tree regrowth or a combination? I mean,
A lot of times when we're going into the timber, we're using a herbicide to terminate the hardwood trees.
okay.
Yeah. And so we use the two ways that landowners can kind of go in with a scalpel and make these surgical decisions in their timber right is with a hatchet and a squirt bottle, or a chainsaw and a squirt bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And the girdling technique, you take a chainsaw and you just cut right inside the inner bark, that cambium layer, the xylem and the phloem, that
I remember
circulatory
those from science class.
Yeah, 7th grade science, right? You just make a cut all the way around. Get in. You don't have to go, 3 inches deep. You just have to get right inside, go all the way around, and you can spray herbicide in there, depending on the species of tree, what herbicide you're using. Spray herbicide in there, and that tree's dead. And then you can use that year round. And that's really easy to use on, larger size trees.
Mm-hmm.
In the summer, we have a lot of trees that are, that big, and it's kind of hard to get
The size of
saw
a golf
around.
ball.
Yeah.
Might as well just cut it.
You can go in with a hatchet and a squirt bottle, and it's called the hack and squirt method, and just hack it and squirt the herbicide in and go on to the next tree.
You don't even have to cut it down. You just hack into it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, it's so easy. Stuff like that. And I feel like you can think of any place you've been in the Ozarks and you see in these tiny little saplings popping up.
Oh, yeah.
It's just crowded. And to think about how much you could do just by removing those and getting some of the
Yes.
bigger trees above that out.
And the cost to clean that up, too. Like, everyone's thinking, the money we made off of timber. And then if it's passed down the line or whatever, the cost to turn that around is a lot. Your time and resources to hack and squirt, you're talking, it could be millions of stems on a property, right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of time and energy trying to clean that up and get it back to where it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. Yeah, it's the whole prescribed burning world. It feels like it may be intimidating to some people getting into it for the first time, but do you find that most people, once they do it once, they find that it was worth the investment in time and educating themselves on it?
Absolutely. And especially when they have enough sunlight to the ground, when they get that 50 or 30% sunlight to the ground, and they start seeing growth and it's greening up, and they start seeing critters in there, they're going, wow, that was worth it.
Yeah.
I got one more fire and land question before we maybe pivot to some trapping and some turkey and some upcoming stuff. So you've got just let's call it a 5-acre field, 3-acre field, doesn't matter, field. Do you ever recommend just burning it? Just throwing a match down and letting it go?
Yeah.
Why? What does that do? Is it
Depends
a
on
native
depends
grass
on,
thing?
depends
or
on
is
what's there.
Yeah.
Right? If it's if it's fescue, we're probably gonna have to spray.
Yeah.
And then burn, then probably spray again because fescue's really established.
Pretty
It's been there
resilient.
for years. If it's if it will carry, and maybe you've got some multiflora rose or cerisa in there or something, we can burn that off. and get some sunlight to the ground and see what else is growing. And then we may have to come in and use herbicide and spot treat. You know, we got a little patch of sericea here. We're going to treat it. We can clean that up. Open ground is really easy to convert, whether you want to convert it to food plots or native habitat. Open ground's much easier to convert into high quality habitat than managing hardwoods.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because it takes some time, and it's difficult to manage hardwoods to some extent.
Yeah, that makes sense. One last question on this, and then we will pivot. Like Plunkett said, give us an idea of a success story where, I mean, I know you guys do this all the time on this property, on other properties for other landowners. Talk me through some of the transformations that individuals have seen and just how significant a difference it can make to combine the burning with the timber stand improvements and the logging or anything else that they might be doing.
Yeah.
I'm sure you got countless.
There's a lot.
Say every growing deer TV story is a success story, Kyle.
Just pick one of your favorites.
Here's a great example, and then we can segue into turkeys. There's a guy, good friend of Grant's and mine out in Kansas. He trapped really hard, worked on predators for many years, and he's like, man, that's a lot of work. And he did this one thing. He started switching up when he's burning. He used to burn only during the dormant season. A lot of grass, which is very common in Kansas or Iowa. Like, you have these really grass-heavy areas, CRP areas, whatnot, and straight grass. Well, he started burning during the summer and getting more forbs. And his turkey population, that one thing has just blown up his turkey population.
Really?
Because he's got really good nesting and brooding habitat at that prime time. And he's checkerboarding it at a certain time where he's never just cleaning the slate, burning his entire property, but he's really methodical about it and leaving cover at different stages. And just how he's transitioned his burn rotation has really impacted his turkey.
Really?
And he has a pile of turkeys. And if you know anything about turkeys in Kansas, a lot of folks are seeing those numbers go down. And then Kansas actually, dropped some tags, right? So
yeah,
that was pretty impressive and quite the story of just the importance of when you burn and how you burn a property.
Yeah.
And what it can do for critters.
I always look at turkeys as one of the prime examples of if you have turkeys and are seeing a growing turkey population, you are doing a good job of managing your land. It feels to me like a key indicator.
It is.
Would you echo that?
I do.
Okay.
I do. We've got clients, a lot of landowners that they do really good habitat and they trap and they have incredible turkey numbers. We have clients that because of their schedule and whatnot, they can only do habitat. And if they have enough acres of habitat and they're in that season where they're really cooking with gas, they have really good turkey numbers. We also have clients that probably don't have near the number of acres of habitat that they can really move the needle on, but they trap really intensively and they have high turkey numbers. So if you can do a combination of both, wow.
Yeah.
But if you can get that, kind of break that glass ceiling, if you will, of those magic number of acres, you could focus just on habitat and we see some really good work.
That's like, to me, the conversation I always see is, and this is, I'm going to ask you a controversial question here. So be ready. But you got two sides of the debate, I feel like a lot of times, and it's habitat people and it's trapping people. And the question I'm going to ask you is, which one makes a bigger difference? If you can only do one, should you only trap or should you only do habitat? Putting you on the spot here, aren't I?
That is a big one. I think it probably goes back to what we were just talking about is maybe you have to look at the neighborhood. If you have really good habitat in the neighborhood and you're that 20-acre guy, you're going to trap.
Yeah. You
better do your part and trap. If you have really good habitat and all of a sudden there's nothing, you're an island out there, you might be able to, if you have enough acres, you might be able to squeeze by.
Yeah.
What is in the Ozarks in your in your mind, like kind of that glass ceiling, grass ceiling
I don't know.
on acres of like, well, to like really move the needle on your property.
Yeah.
Like if you could put a range to it, because I know we talked about this in August, but you're talking about the neighborhood mattering, and that is that example of you might be the guy who has 50 acres, and around you there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on. So you have animals on you, or you don't have animals on you, based on what's going on around you. That being the neighborhood. Yeah. What is a decent range? I know it's not a perfect number, but a good range as to like if you trap and habitat or both or whatever, you can really move the needle on your property. That's
a hard one. Because again, it kind of depends on where you're located. Mm-hmm. There's, some guys that I know some guys that have 50 acres and they are smack dab in the middle of a predator travel corridor. Mm-hmm. And we're talking like they trap over 100 predators every year.
They can't trap enough.
They can't trap enough. We also have guys that just the way their property lays, they lay outside that, real intense corridor, and they'll trap really hard for maybe 2 or 3 years, and then they don't see critters for another 4 or 5 years, or those numbers, and then they kind of spike again, but they're just not in that corridor. Mm-hmm. Very similar to deer, right? How bucks are moving through corridors, high activity type stuff. So, yeah, it really depends too where that property is located within the habitat.
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right, let's pretend like it's away from the city.
You're so good at answering these questions. Yeah. We're trying to like pin you down, but you're like, well, it really depends. And like to your point, you're not just dodging the question.
Yeah.
There's so many variables.
To look around. Yeah.
There's so many variables. And you start talking about turkeys, and you got weather. There's so many things going against a turkey. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so many things
against the turkey.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk trapping a little bit and get into that. And as it relates to turkey, so if you're watching on YouTube, there's a big old pile of beards behind you.
I wish I could say they're mine, but they're actually Grant's.
He has done some damage to the turkeys, and he's helped the turkeys too. So it goes hand in hand. But yeah, so to me it's that indicator species. You're doing things well. And one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about today was your all's trapping program, and the results that you've seen from it. I look around and I see people who are trapping a little bit here and there, and I know you guys obviously talk to a lot more people who are doing that with a mission in mind, an end goal, or just a program. So I'm just curious about what you guys do here in the Ozarks. The numbers behind it, the statistics, and why you formed your program to be what it is, and the results you've seen. So maybe we start with just what is the importance of trapping here in the Ozarks?
Here in the Ozarks, and this is the same story across the board for most people.
Okay,
is fur prices are nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So no one is trapping or coon hunting to make a living, make any money, right? Like I remember when I was and I was even on the downhill side of this, but I remember when I was in high school, we'd hit a coon or we see a coon on the side of the road, I'd pick it up and I might make 15 or 20 bucks. I think the biggest coon I ever sold was like $22.
That's pretty good.
Right?
Yeah.
So high schooler, that's a tank of gas back then,
absolutely.
Right? We don't have those prices.
Compared to today, a coon would go for what, 50 cents?
50 cents, $1.
Crazy.
A big one, maybe $2. So there's no incentive for everyone across the landscape to be trapping. And so predator numbers are on the rise in many areas. And we've also lost habitat. We've removed fire from the landscape. We're fragmenting the habitat. In ag country, they're cleaning up fence rows, right? Maximizing those acres. We've lost a lot of habitat for critters, turkeys, quail, and we're gaining a lot of predators. Back to, like when I was in high school, you hardly ever saw a raccoon on the side of the road. Mm-hmm. And I think this was like 3 years ago or something. I was visiting my grandma, and she lives 30 minutes from me. From my grandmother's house to my home, I counted 30 raccoons
No way.
alive. And that wasn't even counting I lost count of the dead raccoons on the side of the road.
Wow.
Man.
And I'd never seen that before growing up. I can't remember seeing just those type of numbers.
Right.
But there's no price on fur.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really left up to land managers that really care about wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, man, we're trapping, we're really going after, predators and we don't like them. No, that's not it. I enjoy watching a raccoon when I'm sitting up in a deer stand, coming to a little pond. It's fun to watch. I love that. I love seeing a possum, cross and whatnot, right? But it's out of balance. And we got way too many predators, and our habitat and our prey species, they're suffering. So as our part, we got to try to do the best we can to kind of bring those back into balance so both can really thrive. Mm-hmm. We get too many predators, it's just like deer. We get too many and the habitat can't support it. The critters that are there, they're not going to be near as healthy. And gosh, that's not very humane. I mean, life's tough out there. I'm not making it, a Disney story, but gosh, we gotta bring it back in balance if we can, if we really care about wildlife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's what we can do is we can help, both prey and predator species thrive.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we talk about that sometimes. Of we as people, as humans, have a role to play. A lot of people think of nature and they think of this concept that is apart from me and myself. It's out there. It's away from my house. It's everything else that's not humans. But realizing that within nature, we were all created together at the same time. Across on the landscape, we're all a piece of the same pie.
Yeah,
and we're all part of the same community. And so realizing that whether you choose to accept that or not, you do have an impact, positive or negative. And if you are not taking part in your role in nature, that can get out of whack. Things can get out of balance. And so stepping in and seeing, like you said, how to manage and how to keep things in balance and trying to be as educated as you can on that to know what that balance looks like is where you can step in and say, you know what, we've got way too many predators. We need to do something about that.
We do it as deer hunters. We think, oh, we got too many does. I'm going to shoot more does so I can have bigger bucks. Mm-hmm. Why are you drawing the line there? Mm-hmm. Right? You got to balance predators too. You think, oh, fluffy animal. But no, it's the same. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's our responsibility as land managers to do our best for creation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you never want a world where there's no more raccoons, no more coyotes, no more possums. You don't want that, but you want a world where there's not way more raccoons than there are turkeys or way more coyotes than there are deer. All that, that's why we talk about a balance and how humans are a part of that equation.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's
dive into the program.
That's the why. Yeah. How in the world? How do y'all do it?
Yeah.
Because y'all do it. Y'all really do it. How do you do it?
Well, we got a lot of Duke traps.
Okay.
And
are those like a box trap?
We got cage traps.
Or cage trap? Yeah.
Box trap and dog proofs are our two big ones. And when we trap, we're really wanting to help turkeys. Mm-hmm. And so we're targeting those nest predators. Mm-hmm. Raccoons, possums, and skunks are the big ones that we're going to, be able to help balance those numbers with. So we go really hard trying to get as many as we can. And if we trap, we probably will go over 150 this year during trapping season.
150 traps? Predators to take off.
That we've taken off. And everyone goes, oh my gosh, you wiped them out.
Yeah.
We've been trapping like that for, 20, Grant's been doing it 20 years here. I've been here 10 years and we're catching 100 plus every year.
Every single year.
They're not going anywhere.
Wow.
Right. And none of our neighbors are trapping though either. Right. So, and what we've seen, we've taken really good data. We always weigh the predator, just like we weigh a deer to gather that data, look at those trends over time to be able to make good management decisions. And we've seen that the weight of the predators has decreased. And you're going, Well, all right, so they're not as healthy. Well, we're also taking the sex of those animals and we're seeing they're males. High percentage of those critters that we're removing now are males, and they're young males. So when we trap 1 year, we removed the residents, and we've kind of created this void, but there's always going to be young males moving in. And so we continuously have to trap year after year. And so that, when we started seeing that, that told us, hey, we're doing a really good job trapping because we're removing what's here. We're kind of creating this void, and we've got stuff moving in from around us. So we need to keep trapping. We're doing good work. So that's kind of what we're doing. And we're trapping a lot, and we're putting a lot of traps out. Trappers, guys that have a passion for trapping, they're probably going to approach it a little differently than we do. We trap real easy spots because for us, we want to help the wildlife, but we also have to be efficient, right? We got to be honest. We can't spend hours every day diving into the deepest part of our property looking for the fresh sign or driving, 2 hours, checking traps on the trap line, right? So we're going to set our traps on defined travel corridors, and it's a numbers game. So we have enough traps out there. We set them on all our interior roads at these crossings or travel corridors where, the habitat is real edgy or near water where we know critters are moving, and it's really easy for us to check. So we aren't spending a lot of time and money on the trap line, but we're still meeting our mission. And, I'm just throwing a number out here, but that lets us get 75% of those critters. Throughout the trapping season, it's a numbers game. At some point, that raccoon that's, maybe a quarter mile away, he may run this ridge over and find our trap. Yeah. Right? So it saves a lot of time and money on the trap line, and that's how we approach trapping, and we still get those high numbers.
So you're really maximizing your time. Yeah. Because you guys have a lot of ground to cover.
And you can't make that up with fur, right? It used to be guys they may have a seasonal job or they would take off work and they're making a pile of money. They could pay for their gas and their time and come out ahead. We can't sell that fur. We're trying to maximize our time.
That makes sense a lot. Yeah. I like the two things. I like maximizing your time and trying to, do as much as you can to benefit the habitat and the wildlife with what time you have available. And I'm curious, on any given day, I'm assuming you guys have a trap line going right now. How many traps do you have out in a given day or overnight that you're going to check the next day?
Yeah, we've probably right now got really close to 100, 120 out.
Wow. And
we've just built up that number over time. We, when budget allows, we buy a few more traps to just up our chances, right?
What % of those are dog proofs versus box traps?
So going back to saving time, we really like the box traps.
Okay.
Because we can drive, like if we see rain coming or a snowstorm coming and we know critters aren't going to run for a while, or we're going to tear roads up, rutting them up because roads are going to be wet. We need to shut traps down for the weekend, whatever. We can just go by, close that box trap just like that, just hit it, boom, done, close, going on. And then a few days later, that bait is still in there. We put it in a soup can, tin can, set it in the back. It stays dry. We still got bait in there. We just open it up and we're on to the next trap. That saves a lot of time too.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good system. I had a question actually back on the data that you guys keep. I really like that you guys keep the data because that's helpful to know. You're saying when you first started trapping, do you have any idea of what % male to female you had?
I can't remember. That was
a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. I'd have to go back and look at that data.
Yeah, but today,
there were a lot more females, and the males we were catching were older. They were heavier males.
Right. And so today, would you say 80% male, 90% male?
Oh, yeah. Way 80% or more.
And so
those
just young males moving in.
they're moving in because you created a void
Yes.
essentially.
And
now-
that's another reason, another great example of why most people have to trap every year.
Mhm.
Don't think, man, I trapped 100 predators. I'm good. I saved the turkeys for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
You have to know your property. You have to know what's going on. And trapping is a every year effort for most guys if they're really wanting to do good habitat
Yeah.
or wildlife work.
For raccoons, I don't know how much you know about raccoons, but I'm pretty sure raccoons are also called boars and sows, right? Just like bears are. And so like when we talk about bears and when we went on those like den visits with Myron and Game and Fish, they were talking about how the younger males will get pushed out just the same way that you're talking about. I'm curious, how similar are raccoons in their, like, how often do they have a litter? How many do you know? As far as there's probably not a lot of people who would really know a whole lot about raccoons unless you're really, really into it. But I don't know. Do you know any of that kind of information about raccoons?
Yeah, they're going to have a couple.
Okay.
And so and not everything's going to survive, right?
Yeah.
Little raccoon
it's a tough world
sandwich
out
out there. I mean, so now we're dropping numbers too, but think about one great example is we did the math a couple of years ago. What we trapped on 900 acres, what we trapped, it averaged a predator, raccoon or possum is primarily what we use, raccoon and possum, a predator every 6 acres.
It's a lot of predators.
And we didn't catch them all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of predators running around.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine being a turkey poult or a hen with a nest trying to avoid a predator.
Yeah.
What are the chances if there's one raccoon in this 6 acres, at some point it's going to come down, cut downwind or cut a track and find that nest?
Yeah. You're bound to run into it eventually.
So there's a lot of critters out there.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
And they're eating eggs. I mean, that's like what they're going after. So you trap that one raccoon. Let's pretend you have 18 acres. You trap a few. Those turkeys are sticking around right there. You've eliminated that threat for the most part.
The best trapping that you can do, if it's legal, every state's a little different when you can trap and whatnot. The best trapping you can do is right before that nesting or even during the nesting season. Because if you can take that relief off that nest and those poults at that prime time, that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck.
Yeah.
So if you're in a state, you can trap year round. If again, back to your time, if you had 2 weeks or 3 week window that you're like, I can commit to trapping, get it as close to that nesting season as you can. Because that's what's really going to help those nests survive.
And then for you, knowing where you've got a higher quality nest habitat, are you going to focus in and around on those areas?
Well,
closer to the nesting season?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We know they're going into, using that edge, going into those areas, diving in and out, looking for food. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we will go close to some of those areas. We don't want to get too close because we don't want a hen to abandon a nest. We don't want to disturb that hen. If we, we're out driving, every day and we see hen going into a nest, we don't want to be checking that trap every day because she's got a nest close by. And if she gets squirrely and spooked off, we don't want her abandon it.
Yeah.
So, fortunately, Missouri, just past few years, they're doing work trying to let landowners kind of pick up the slack here and do good good wildlife work. And they've extended the trapping season on private land to get closer to that nesting season.
Really?
Yeah.
When is the Missouri trapping season?
So the regular season's going to go through February, but then we can also trap really close into turkey season.
Oh, okay.
So they really extended it on private land.
That's cool. Yeah, that is really cool. It's a good way to
and that was
give people the opportunity to do it.
That was a huge step forward for the turkey work in the state.
Yeah.
Is Arkansas year-round landowner?
There's a predator control permit
That's what it
that
is.
allows you to take certain animals, but I don't think you can take
Trap.
fur bear, certain types
Yeah.
that you're not allowed to.
Okay.
Definitely check the regs on that.
Yeah.
If you're listening.
We don't target coyotes as much, but if some guys,
I was just about to ask you if
We're
you're really
not-
focused on
yeah,
the fur bearers.
it takes a little more time to set a
Coons.
coyote trap, and
And they're harder to trap.
coyotes in the Ozarks are tough.
Some
And
smart
I know
predators.
there's dirt guys that are going to get on here and say, "Oh, coyotes are easy," but
Yeah.
it's tough in the Ozark Mountains, in the rocks, getting that trap level. It can be tough, and so for the amount of time and the number of coyotes we catch, our time is better spent targeting those raccoons and possums. But if you are targeting coyotes, one thing we do on years that we may want to throw a few traps out if we start seeing a lot of coyotes, trap really hard for raccoons and possums, and then trap for your coyotes. Because you don't want to spend 10, 15 minutes setting a coyote trap, getting it perfect, taking out all those rocks to get it bedded right. And then you come in and there's a possum sitting there the next day, right? You're like, man, I could have caught you in a cage trap. So that saves a lot of time too. If you can knock back those raccoons and possums early and then put your coyote traps in the ground, that will really help you.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, I'm going to ask you for another success story on trapping specifically. Talk to me about a time that you guys have worked with a landowner or even around here where they weren't trapping before. They implemented trapping as a program and really stuck to it. And then what did they see afterwards?
Yeah. Let me see here. I'm trying to think.
I know just in the back of your mind, you've got this catalog of all these different stories.
Yeah.
So
I remember, I can't remember the specifics, but I think he was in Tennessee. There was a landowner and he had a lot of coyotes. And if I remember, I think they took like 60 coyotes off his property in like 2 weeks or something like that. And had a great response in the deer herd, like fawns, right? That was a great example of that. And that's for deer. But I can't think of a specific example other than here because I don't hear a lot about it because they kind of do it and they're also doing habitat work a lot of times. But I know there was one guy, where was he? Tennessee? Was he in Tennessee? He sent us a video, and in this video, I remember this, there had to have been over 50 turkey in this video. And he had trapped, had a real small property, and he had trapped over 70 predators the year before.
wow.
And he had all these turkeys on his property, and they were all, young turkey, poults and jakes. I mean, they were coming in, that winter.
Yeah.
It was during the winter, so they'd survived all summer, and I mean, it was like, oh my gosh! And he'd trapped a lot of predators.
Yeah. So that's just right away. I
Yeah.
mean, that's maybe.
And he really didn't have a lot of habitat.
yeah.
He was a closed campy forest all around him, and which is like for the most part, like a pool table. You set in a turkey nest right here, and you're saying, "Don't find me."
Yeah.
Right. On the closed campy leaf litter. I mean, gosh, you can see those white eggs from 100 yards.
Yeah. Pretty easy to find. So would you say that trapping is a little bit quicker of a turnaround? Like if you would remove the predator right away
Yeah, if you get really close to that nesting season.
versus habitat work can be a little bit longer ramp up and time frame to
it can take longer
effect.
because it's a process, right? We got to kill a tree. We got to wait for that tree to die. We got to get fire through there. Maybe it's the tree's dead, but we got to burn to remove that leaf litter so sun's actually getting to the ground so something can grow. Yeah, we're weeks, months, maybe a couple of years down the road.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's why you can do both.
That's why you can do both. All right. Well, let's kind of wrap this up and tie it in now. So you've talked about land management. We went through prescribed burning, TSI. We've talked trapping. At the end of the day, yes, we want the habitat to be enriched. We want it to be better. But guys like us, we also like to hunt. How do these things impact the hunting and increase the odds of success for people?
Yeah. Well, there's several ways we're talking about manipulating the habitat to pattern deer, know how deer, change how deer are traveling through a property. If you're able to improve habitat, that's big. Those glade areas, gosh, you can see deer. I mean, just see deer, right? It's almost like in some of these areas, it's almost like hunting out west. You can look over in the far mountainside and you can see a buck, walking right across a bluff, and you're going, all right. So you're scouting and you're going, oh, he dumped in there, and you go over there and there's this beautiful white oak flat. And you're like, well, it makes total sense why he was walking right here and dumping right in this flat, right? So you can see and learn so much more, right? And have some really good hunting. And also we can increase those numbers. More habitat we have, the more food there is. We can support higher numbers. If we're reducing predators, balancing that, we get those prey species numbers up, and so you're going to have more critters. It's a numbers game too, so you can see more.
Yeah.
So it's all around great for hunting. Great habitat, great land management, great wildlife management. Always boils down to great hunting opportunities.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I feel like as a landowner, you probably get a lot more satisfaction out of having put the investment into your land, the satisfaction of just walking around and seeing the difference that you've made, and then being able to translate that into, man, I've got this really great deer that's now, staying on my property or at least coming through, or I've got turkeys where I didn't have turkeys before. I mean, that's just a really cool thing that you can kind of sit back and be proud of.
You see the results. Yeah. And the great thing about the habitat too is you see the seasons of it, right? And no matter the season, whether it's hunting season or not, you can still go out and enjoy the results. Or maybe in a native area, you see a bachelor group of bucks coming in and they're feeding, and I mean, you just go, man, we're doing it, right? This is working.
Yeah,
it's what it's all about.
Yeah, that is really cool. The stuff, Kyle, we talk about this. It's a lot of the times it's the work of it that's actually the fun part.
Yeah,
like the things that we enjoy the most are some of the hardest things that you can do.
Absolutely. Well, and when work pays off, then it's triple the satisfaction. It's got to be.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, everybody gets excited about a lucky break, especially out in the woods, or you catch a big fish you weren't expecting and you feel real good, or you shoot a big deer that you didn't even know was there, you feel real good. But that I can't even compare to the ones that you work towards. Yeah, that bear you bait for, that habitat you manage, and that buck comes in, or you're trapping predators and the turkeys are better, and you get a turkey. I mean, it's so satisfying.
Yeah,
it's so fun.
It is. Well, Daniel, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you just opening up your brain to us and letting us just rattle you with questions for the last hour and a half, however long we went. But man, just a wealth of information, and I'm always grateful for what you guys do because it's so local. It's here in the Ozarks. We can see what you guys are doing, see how it works, and then try to translate that into what we do and how we can improve our land a little bit. So just really, really grateful for you guys.
Yeah, if y'all want to follow along with what Daniel and Dr. Grant Woods are doing, you can follow along at Growing Deer TV.
Yep.
Or is it growingdeer.tv?
.tv.com.
Yeah.
Google will find us.
Just Google Growing Deer TV and you'll get to check out all they're doing. And it's some good stuff. It's some great content. So for anybody interested, check them out.
Yeah.
We will see y'all on the next one. We appreciate it.
That's right. We appreciate you guys. See you next time.